Bakema, much appreciated. Thanks for that report. Let's turn back now to a story that we would have visited last week on burial space in Gauteng. This, of course, has come under the spotlight after the Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo announced that the Westpark Cemetery is expected to reach full capacity this year. The entity says it faces challenges in maintaining sufficient burial space for future generations. University of Pretoria's Dr. Jacob Mokhutso joins us now for more on that conversation. Doc, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. In our discussion with Joburg City Parks and the organization for cemeteries, as well as those responsible for the undertakers, right? They would have reflected with us that the best option, seeing that we are running out of space, is to explore the other burial options. One being second and third interments, two being reduction of burials, which was new to me, that you can actually, in a period of about, I think after 10 years, go back to the grave and make the grave smaller by taking the remains, I suppose, and putting them in a smaller coffin. There is also the option of cremation, and we also learned of aquamation last week. Talk to us about the beliefs in society that are making, one, the option of second interment a little bit more palatable. We're seeing more people opting for that more than the others.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I think religion and culture plays a huge role in how people react to these new ways of burying our loved ones. One, for example, Africans have a particular way in which they bury their loved ones. I'm aware that, for example, in KwaZulu-Natal, the municipalities that side have tried to encourage people to opt for cremation, and they have made a backlash on that because that is contrary to how Africans, believe in burying their loved ones. Using a grave burying more than one person, it is something that is growing among African people, and they are finding that a bit acceptable method of burying their loved ones. And I think it is because gravesite are more family kind of settings, so it is a bit acceptable to go that route than other options that have been recommended, such as cremation.
Yeah. So you're saying that the second burials, if they fall within the family line, that becomes a little bit more palatable, because there is still a belief that you are maintaining a family unit.
Exactly. Because remember, a gravesite is not just a gravesite, but it's a memorial for family. It is a space where they come for rituals. It is also a form of identity for them to have a space where they would say an uncle or any family member has been laid to rest in this space. Again, it is believed that those who have passed on, they still remain within the family setting or in the environment in which they grow up in. Hence, you would see in the past we've had freedom fighters who have died in foreign countries being repatriated back home. It is for that particular reason that they are brought home to be closer and nearer their loved ones.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I mean, the repatriation of remains, I mean, it would include a process of exhuming those particular remains. Now, you have an option of reduction of graves where the remains would need to be exhumed. In practice, in the African culture, how do they view that? Is it not viewed as disturbing those who had passed?
Not entirely, because remember they are they are being repatriated from a foreign country where they are buried amongst people who are not their next of kin or their family, and they are now brought back home to their loved ones. So I think that is found to be a bit acceptable because of that fact that they are brought home. They are now in their place of birth where they would be amongst, their loved ones. And their loved ones are also would be able to do those rituals which they were not able to do because they were buried elsewhere. And that is a form of, giving them the proper burial as it is believed by African people.
Yeah. The question of cost, I mean, anecdotally speaking to City Parks, I didn't get into much more details into it, but they believe that a cremation or even an aquamation, even though in the city of Johannesburg they don't have that facility as yet, is more cost effective in terms of cost than it would cost with the normal burial, if you like, if you can use that phrase, in terms of coffin, in terms of all the processes that one needs to engage for that normal burial, as opposed to a cremation. Why is the cost factor not a deterrent?
I think, as I said, culture plays a huge role. And in my reading of some of these practices, some scholars have also noted that often, even after a burial, most families are left in debt because of the cost factor. But because of the role culture and religion plays in African people and in different communities, is the fact that for them, that aspect of having laid their loved ones to rest and having followed all the rituals that are expected. And remember again, the aspect of, for example, in the Zulu culture, where death is viewed as somebody who has gone to their ancestors. So it is upon those who are alive to ensure that they follow all the expected rituals so that the deceased can join the ancestors. Or else there would always be misfortunes that will befall those who are left behind if they do not follow those processes. And perhaps because of the effect of culture, people are willing to go that route. But again, having said that, we are seeing a growing trend, even though it's not that much among Africans who are opting for cremation because of the cost factor. In my reading, again, I've found that in Kenya, for example, cremation is now becoming an option of burial because of costs, because indeed costs and looking at the economic climate is a factor that needs to be considered. Yeah. And not only that, even the environmental health, because there are also other options which other people who are advocating for healthy environment are saying we need to look at ways in which we do not kill the environment as well, because in the long run, that is also going to affect society. Yeah.
From a scholarly perspective, I mean, we hear from the council, or at least the city, that we need to teach more people. So education. We hear from the Association of Cemeteries that more education needs to be done. Even undertakers must teach their clients about these options. Would it represent a huge shift in terms of belief system? So if we were to bring traditional leaders, chiefs, and you would educate them on these options, is there space to maneuver those particular beliefs around the question of cremation?
I think so. I think so. Reflecting on what we went through as a country and the world during COVID. COVID brought strange ways of burying our loved ones, even of interacting as people. But because of the situation we found ourselves in, we had to adapt to those new ways of burying our loved ones, ensuring that there's space between people and all of those things, putting on masks. We got used to that system. So I think, again, coming back to, because I don't think we need to only focus on the fact that we are running out of space of gravesite, but to also remember the detriments that our gravesite are making to the environment. For example, in 2012, there was a study that was made in Brazil, which discovered that gravesite, sewers, industrial work, as well as other factors, are affecting our environment greatly. Hence, there are other ways in which are introduced, which are all called clean bereavement processes or burial processes, where instead of cremation using fire, they would use water instead, as a way that would be a bit cost effective. Secondly, it would also is clean for the environment, and it's another way in which can be explored. So I think not only focusing on cremation, but focusing on other aspects, and also trying to highlight how dire the situation is as we are running out of grave sites. Secondly, because of how this is affecting the environment. And if it is affecting the environment, it means it will then affect human beings and animals in a long run. So, and also in that conversation, not excluding the religious leaders, because Africans remain highly religious as much as they are cultural. So I think all those entities or communities, when they are brought together, they can make a bit of a difference in terms of teaching our people to turn their ways. And I think going back as well to how we as Africans have adjusted. You know, I was looking at how we used to bury our loved ones in the past, where Africans would leave the remains in the mountains so that the animals would devour the remains, where they would throw the remains in flowing rivers, to where we are right now. Yeah. And I think with more conversations and also adapting to the realities that are facing us, our people can come to a point of adjusting to these realities.
Dr. Jacob Mokhutso, I appreciate your time. Thanks.